Hello and welcome to another episode of Dream On Podcast. My name is Julia Gentry.
And I am Travis Gentry.
And we are live in our Facebook group, Dream Together. Hello to all of our members. Surprise! This was an unplanned live, but we are glad to be here with you. If anyone catches live and you want to add some questions in the chat, don't be shy. You can go do so now. And if you are watching this back, as an afterthought, don't forget to click on the show notes and join our incredible Facebook group where we talk about all the things and we do lives like this. But today we're going to invite you into a conversation that I think is near and dear to our heart and is not only going to invite you into our journey, but is also going to challenge and encourage you in your own as we are talking about addiction. What owns you? But before we do that, and I talk any longer, enough about me. Like, oh my gosh, this is enough JG. Enough about me. We always like to start these podcasts with asking each other questions that you might not know, maybe lighthearted, maybe deep and profound. But mine is today for Mr. Gentry, and my question for you is, what would be the creepiest thing you could say to someone on the street that you don't know as you pass them by?
The creepiest thing.
Like you're walking down Bentonville and you don't know someone. What could you do to them? That would be like the creepiest thing and even make you uncomfortable.
Oh man. I mean, the first thing, which I don't know if it's creepy, it is creepy to me, but is to just tell someone I love them.
Do it. Will you please do that? What would you do?
I love you. Well, I think it depends on the person. Like, I don't throw that word out. Like, I don't say it to very many people.
You guys, no, the struggle is real. I need to invite someone to tell.
It's so real. I tell people, or Julia
No,
says.
this is for real. We're going to bed the other night, and I put my arm around him, and I'm like, "I love you, baby." He's like, "I love me too." It's for real. So when he says that he doesn't say it often, he doesn't. He doesn't.
It comes back to the meaning. Like, what is the meaning? And I think some people, it's like they just love everything. And so when I say love, like it means something to me. So it's like I can't just be like, "Oh, I love you. I love you. I love that." You know, like it's just not.
If you're walking down the street, like I want to be the recipient.
So that would make me creeped out. Like
if someone passed you was like they just like if they just lip it, they don't even say it. That's amazing. You guys, I hope one of you gets to pass Travis on the street.
Don't tell me you love me. I don't love you.
You know, what's funny though, is that right now where I'm actually teaching the kids about biblical love, just because again, right now, as we're in the studio, it's almost Valentine's Day, which as a family, we don't subscribe to. But they see it everywhere. And so we've been talking about just biblical love and what is love and what does love mean to you and all that. And it says that love is the most powerful thing, Trav. It's the most.
I know it's powerful. And that's why I
use it sparingly.
I hold it tightly. No. And I say, like, some of our friends, obviously my immediate family and stuff like that, I say that word.
It's a good thing we're not talking about love today, so we're just gonna jump in. We'll see a counselor later about this.
Okay. Have you ever had someone say "I love you" and you're like,
I don't know what to say back.
Thanks.
Oh no, Travis, here's why I love you. This is why. Oh no, now if anyone says that I love you to me and I tell them thank you, they're gonna know. If you tell Trav, if you ever text Trav and you get like a fist bump back, like you say I love you, if he like fist bumps you, you're like, oh man, this applies. No, but I love you is because prior to you, I'll just call it, they say like BT before Travis.
They call it, you call it.
Before you, I would have been guilty of, if someone said, I love you, I'd have been like, love you too. And I would have never, and then you create the space in my life that now I find myself truly like thanks. Because I don't want to lie, because you are such a man of truth and principle that no, yeah, thanks. Just give him a good old thanks. If someone's like, I love you.
It's
I see you.
It's just the meaning I put behind it. It's not right or wrong, folks.
Okay,
It's
good.
not right
And
or
it's
wrong.
also not what we're talking about today. Lord Almighty, that's the longest introduction ever. We're not talking about love. We're talking about addiction. We're talking about addiction. And we, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we just want to invite you into our journey of just sobriety and what that's looked like in our life. And then ultimately, we hope that this episode just really encourages you in your journey wherever you're at, and also challenges you, because I think this can be a challenging topic. I think it's something that every one of us struggles with. Like, this doesn't have to be one of those gruesome topics just about alcohol or drugs, or, I mean, I think that we all have addictions that are worth looking at. And so we just hope that it challenges you and encourages you and moves you forward in your journey of freedom. So let's jump in. Let's talk about addiction. Define the word. How do you define that word?
Something that has you.
Oh, that's a good one.
So your attention, your time, your resources, and in excess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like from when you get up to afternoon, like you're constantly, it's in the back of your mind.
So the difference, and I heard you say, but I think there's a difference in, it's when you have something versus when it has you.
Mm-hmm.
So give an example.
Give an example as
Like, give an example. So, because I think that that's like so simple as to say, like, okay, there's a difference between when, like, I'll even use it when you have a glass of wine versus that when that glass of wine has you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so give an example in your life when you've seen that shift, right? Like when you had something and then when that thing had you.
Mm-hmm. I think when it becomes more like it's not a tool, or it's not a something that you can use like this. So the phone can be very addictive.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes I catch myself where I'm thinking about my phone or things I need to do on my phone. And then when I stop and back up and I'm like, do I need to do these things? Do I need to get them done? Or is it just like the self-satisfaction of like the dopamine hit that I get, whether it's an email or a text or, checking something off my box.
Mm-hmm.
And so it like starts to have me of like, where's my phone? I need my phone.
Interesting.
And so I actually just switched it over probably a week ago. And so because I have alerts on my phone for, stocks or text messages. And so now I have it blocked from, I think it's like 8:00 or it's like 7 at night to like 8:00 in the morning.
You can do that?
Uh-huh.
You like specifically times? You don't just like block it all together?
Yeah. So I can't see. So if I look at my phone, it doesn't show any text, nothing comes through.
That's amazing.
Nothing comes through there.
That's the worth of the price of admission right there. Y'all go do that. Go do that. Oh, interesting. I think that this is this is the thing under the thing that creates transformation in this area, because I think that there are some addictions that I would say, I think that the minute that we're mindful of them, they're easy to break, right? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I was doing this. I didn't realize that I was like OCD. I didn't realize that this thing had become an idol. And so I think that there's going to be this short list of things that even for you listening, that you're going to go, oh, easy, done, boom, 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 boom. And it's really easy to move through. And then there's the bigger items. But I think what you're saying is so interesting around it's, I have a phone, or does the phone have me? Right. I have a glass of wine, or does the wine have me? Right. Like, I enjoy my work, or does my work have me? I mean,
I think addiction in general, though, it has you.
Like, 100. I think that's the difference. Like, that's the line. You're like, well, how do I know if I'm addicted? There's your line.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
That's how I would preface it, of like, here's where you're going into addiction, is that it has you.
Yeah.
It has your time, attention, and resources.
Which as I was putting my thoughts together, it's that one of the definitions that I found that I think is now telling and proves that statement to be true is it says that addiction is defined as not having control over doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found interesting in my own life of that real fine line is that the minute I cross that line and I start to become addicted to something, it's as though the place I'm trying to find myself is the place I'm ultimately losing myself. And so it's like
Yeah.
the place I'm trying to find comfort is now like I'm losing myself in that, right? If I'm trying to be important in my work, now I'm losing myself in my work. And so it's like, for me, I've been able to start to notice that that line is that I'm actually now starting to control something, which is maybe why I would do the addictive behaviors, right? Is because I actually want to control this because I don't trust it, or I'm afraid, or I'm out of my comfort zone. And so it's like I'm seeking control, but then the irony of addiction is now I'm losing control, and it's like that's been the big awareness for me, even in our journey with, quitting alcohol. And then now just currently in my life of when I'm doing my own audit is, oh, isn't that ironic? Is that the minute that I try to control something is the minute that now I'm losing control and I'm addicted to something that now has me and I'm not operating from a place of freedom.
Yeah. And it's where a lot of people hide and identify themselves with of like, I have an addictive personality, or, it runs in the family, or I've been doing it for so long. Like, I just can't quit. I can't stop doing this.
Yeah.
And it's like time and time again, I've experienced and seen people stop whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like I've heard people with cigarettes, which I've never been addicted or, smoked, to the point where you're like, I need to like quit this habit. Like, but my grandfather smoked since he was like a teenager, and cold turkey one day he quit.
Yeah.
So it's all like mental.
So mental.
And so it's just the will to want to stop something,
Yep.
as opposed to saying like, well, it's just what I've been doing, or, like it's how I am, or it's almost like a disease that I can't get rid of.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's not a disease, it's a choice.
I agree. And I think that there's, right, depending upon the level of addiction, dependent upon the can of worms that you open, right? So I think that the first step is always this mental, right? And then I think we can create these chemical dependencies, right, that make it harder to find freedom, because right now my brain needs it in my body. Like I get the layers there, but I think the piece that you're speaking to that I think makes it really challenging to overcome in any area is that the minute that you go, well, I just have an addictive personality, you're like, well, then there's the mountain. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's you not taking responsibility and identifying as that. And now it's going to be way harder simply because you're now seeing yourself as an addictive personality. And I'm a believer that I don't think that God made anyone that was like, you know what, there's Travis. Travis is going to have an addictive personality. Like, there it is. And that person, like, they're just going to be wired to, no, I don't believe that that's how God created us in his original design. And I think that that's the thing that stops most people in even breaking free.
Yeah. And I understand that there's different levels of like, maybe someone that like the support that they need to walk through it. But I think one is like the decision, but it's like anybody that has, whether it's alcohol or drugs, they go through a detox. Like if you were to go to a place, they detox you first.
Yeah.
And then they start to give you tools, new thoughts, new habits, new patterns, and then a community of people that are like, can come around you to checks and balance and to support you. And it all comes back to, though, the will of wanting to change, though, like whether it's shopping or work or drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
And alcohol was one of the things. And I think there again, we all have different addictions to a certain level in different, almost like times in our life. Work could be like, I'm working 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week and just grinding and doing it. But it's at some level, it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. Just like if you were to drink, as much as we did for a season of our life, where it's like, it's just not sustainable. It's not healthy. And it had to stop. It wasn't like, well, we'll just have, a glass of wine, because we started and stopped so many times that didn't work for us.
Yeah.
Can some people? Yes. But that's to me, I don't see how someone can go from drinking a lot to then just drinking like once in a while and one or two glasses.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting is that I knew that alcohol was starting to become a problem when I was recognizing that I was thinking about it often. So now it had me like, and I didn't drink a lot. I drink often. Right. And so, but then it became this like habitual thought process that I was having all the time. And I was even around friends that would have normalized it. So like our addiction is interesting in that it didn't look like we had a problem on paper. And in fact, it was very normal, right? Like I think most people would have drank the amount or the levels that we did. But it's one thing was that I started to realize that I had friends who actually didn't think about it the way that I did. So they could have a drink or two and it like spend no additional time thinking about it, which was not my journey. I was always thinking about the next time and the next day. And is it 5 o'clock and Friday? And, oh, I'll meet you there and I can have a glass of wine. Like it became so much a part of my train of thought. But then the other piece for me that I think most of us overlook in like really determining if we're addicted to something is that ultimately alcohol became the place that I was now asking it to give me something it was never designed to give me. And if you look at one of the words synonyms for addiction, it actually is the word dependence. Right. And now what does that mean? It means that I need it to give me something that it's not actually designed to give me. So it's like money is not bad until I'm asking it to make me feel successful, right? Relationships are really healthy until now I need this relationship to make me feel important. Right? Even wine is not bad. The Bible does not say don't drink wine. It just says don't get drunk. And so now if I need a couple of drinks to feel a buzz and then ultimately to be drunk, why? Because I'm asking it to give me something that I don't know how to give myself. And that's what alcohol became to me is that, oh, this needs to be the place that I could unwind. I could take a deep breath. Like I could tap out. I could show no sign of weakness. And I started to realize, oh, shoot, I'm asking it to give me something that I actually don't know how to ask for, how to receive, I don't know that. And that's when the transformation started for me.
And it was a place to hide.
100%.
I think for both of us to a certain level, because it was like, I'll drink to not feel maybe certain emotions or to disconnect. And that's what I hear a lot is that I just, it takes the edge off. Yeah. I just need to relax. And that's what I used it for too, except it wasn't like 1 or 2, it was 5 or 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And so then it got to the point where it wasn't relaxing. It was like making me not like productive.
Yeah.
And then it was a compounding effect. You do that one day and then you don't feel good and you typically eat bad food. And then the next day you start off not on the best of, momentum.
Yeah.
And then it's like, one day leads into 2 or 3 or 4. And that was our journey and then we'd stop for a week and then we'd, hey, you going to the grocery store? Or, hey, do you need anything at the grocery store? And it was like dropping the subtle hint of like, man, I hope she takes the bait of like
glass of wine.
Yeah,
I need a glass of wine.
Me too.
But you know what's so interesting is that I think that the interesting thing about addiction and our desires that we need something. And if we actually go, okay, what am I asking this thing to give me that it's not actually designed to give me? Generally, what we're saying is comfort. I need a place to hide. I need to rest. I need validation. Like if you really think about the core needs for us as human, they're universal. And yet we all want to hide our place of need. But the interesting thing about our place of need is it shows that, man, I do have a need and I'm in need of God. Like, so the weird part about this is that here God created within us a hole that only he can fill. So it means that we all have this need. And then I think what happens if you look back in Genesis, and I've been studying this relentlessly because what happens for Adam and Eve is that they have a need and they go to the fruit and they eat the forbidden fruit for that fruit to give them something it was never designed to give them, to meet the need that they had. Then they hide. So now they're wired to hide from God. And God's like, hey, what do you need? And they're like, nothing, we're fine. And then they hide their need, which now you fast forward thousands of years and we're doing the same thing. So here we have this hole. We're going to all the things around us to ask it to give us something. And then we're hiding our place of need, telling nobody that I need comfort. I need care. I feel insecure. I'm vulnerable. Like we're not telling anybody. And yet then now we're turning to the vices around us, hiding behind those vices, which means now I'm actually never getting what I need in a healthy way, wondering why I'm addicted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
and it could be, there's so many obviously different kinds of addiction.
It's
just that like dopamine hit, that like quick, and we live in such an instant gratification world that it's like, I just need, one more pair of shoes, or I need to work a little bit more or a little bit harder. Cause then I feel, fulfilled or valued for that short period of time.
Yep. Well, and I think that's the slippery slope is that it works for a minute right? It did. I mean, alcohol in that hour or two, like, gave me what I needed. It gave me a resting place. It allowed me to hide. It gave me comfort. And then it became this, because now I just keep looking for that next hit as opposed to actually getting the healing that I needed. Right. And so it's like, the idea here is how can I identify my need and how can I get it met in a healthy way?
So what questions would you ask, or do you ask yourself, of like, what has my attention?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, so let me walk you through me too, because this will be my own therapy and anyone else who's listening. For me, it was when I first started to identify, this would have been 2 years ago now, that I'm turning to alcohol more than I should be. Like, it's just that, and I think all of us, if we're somewhat aware, know immediately. You're like, I know of a couple areas that I am hiding, right? Like, I am running to this thing. I am now, I would say that it has me, right? Like, I am dependent on it, whatever that is. So I was starting to become aware. We were in just a challenging time. We just moved to Florida. We were remodeling our house, like, and it was just more aware that, like, every day I was like, dang, I need a break. I need a glass of wine. And it started to become that habitual pattern. And I remember being in our kitchen and like, I heard the Holy Spirit ask me, can I be your hiding place? And that's when that phrase started for me of like, what is this giving me that I can't give myself? And I realized, oh, alcohol is giving me a place to hide. So that's what I find myself even to this day asking is, where am I hiding? Meaning, where am I not showing up boldly? Where am I not being honest with myself or other people? Where am I pretending my weakness away? Where am I hiding? That has opened me up to the areas of addiction that I keep turning to, like, all of the things to be my hiding place as opposed to just the Holy Spirit, God.
Do you ask yourself on a, daily, weekly basis of like, okay, what has me in an unhealthy way?
Um, I don't know that I've been asking myself that as of lately, but it's been a question that's pivotal in my journey up until this point, these last couple of years. So I don't know that I ask it on a daily, but I notice it when I start to get stalled in my results. Yes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, 2 years ago when I asked that question, I was starting to get stalled, and, like, I knew that, like, dang, what I'm doing is not gonna get me different results, so what do I need to do to change? So I started asking that question. That's when I was like, I knew it was alcohol. Alcohol was my next hide. And so now I would tell you that the place that I have felt like I really need to lean in and trust God has been actually just with social media. I know this sounds really crazy, but has been an area that I've really been wrestling with because I have felt God asking me to write more and to be more courageous in my writing and creating of digital products and all the things. But I'm now still just like hiding behind social media, and I got to do one more thing, and I got to do one more post, and I got to do one more story. And I'm like doing this like constant. I mean, for a year, I have been doing the stories and following the plan and doing the stories. And I actually felt like God asked me, will you lay it down? And will you come right with me? And will you actually, in the quiet place, instead of trying to do all the things, will you just do the main thing that I've asked you to do? So it's been another area. So I've actually laid down social media for a while, which is counterintuitive because right now I should be doing that. And I wasn't going to say anything to my team because here I have a team of marketing. And the other day, and I was like, okay, God, I felt strongly that God was like, this has become an idol. Like, you are thinking about it all the time. And the funny part about it is I hate it. So I don't even like it. Like, I don't enjoy it. I don't like the game, but I'm thinking about it all the time, constantly. I need to take a picture. I need to post it, like, 24/7 from 4:30 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. I am constantly thinking about it. So I feel like the other day, God was like, that's an idol. I was like, it's not an idol. I'm supposed to do it. It's not, it's not an idol, just like alcohol. It's not an idol. It's not an idol. And he says, it is an idol. And you need to tell your team. I was like, I'm not telling my team. Okay, here's the deal. If they say anything about this, then I'll say something. This is and I'm literally, as I'm posting in my morning quiet time, like as I'm posting this last week, Caleb says, I kid you not. He says, we're getting to the end of this. And he said, we're kind of creating some structure and some strategy and how we're going to lift and all the bold moves and all the things we're doing. And he looks at me and he says, JG, you could legitimately not post for the rest of your life. And we have more material than you would ever need. And I start sobbing. I'm like sobbing. And he goes, you literally could disappear, not post one more thing. And I was like, well, funny you should say that. So that's an area right now that now we're looking at as a team. But that's an area I was hiding.
Me too.
I know.
Me
I
too.
know, like if I got one more notification of Travis posting on Instagram, I was like, I'm exhausted.
I know that one post I have. I think it's my picture.
With one follower.
Myself.
So what has kept you, talk to me about your journey with alcohol and what has kept you sober in that?
What's kept me sober in that? I think it's just what I want more than what I used to want.
Mhm.
And so I think the tipping point for me, and how I felt, and having no, we had 4 kids at the time. Zion was just a little guy. I think it was just the representative of a father that I wanted to be, and the leader of the house, of saying, like, I didn't like how I would show up sometimes, and it wasn't like all the time, but it's just those few times, that if that few times happened, every month or every 6 months, it's like that's the memories that I'm creating for my kids to have of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
the impetus.
that was like, yeah. And the incident with Malachi, and my kind of tipping point, which happened around the same time as yours. And so it was like, I don't struggle. Like, once I make a decision.
Share that, because I think that's especially for people who haven't heard your story. Will you share that moment?
So I started drinking when I was 10. You don't go that far back. No, I'm just joking.
When was the first time you had a drink of alcohol?
Oh man. I was trying to think of that, like last month, like a while ago. And I couldn't tell you like the first time. Like, my parents drank. And so, and then obviously, it was in high school. So I wasn't 10 by any means.
Oh, that's the thing. That's
but
real
it
thing.
was in high school, and it was probably at a party or a friend's house or something like that. And then,
do you know that you were the reason that I had my first drink?
I was not. You could blame it on me, or you can make excuses or justify why you had your first drink. But
Travis broke up with me, and the only thing I knew was I ran to the bottle. It was like every country song, he broke up with me.
Yeah, and then your friends called me, and Julia's drinking. Awesome.
Not awesome. Not awesome. That's not awesome.
Good for you.
You guys, this is another podcast, but that's legitimately, that's why I started drinking. Travis is why I started, and then ultimately why I stopped drinking. Look at you, redeem that full circle 18 years later.
I love how people can like push off their own decisions to someone else. So keep telling yourself that.
Okay, anyway, so Malachi. So what's the moment with Malachi? Why is it? Why?
Yeah. So, well, going back to high school, like, I didn't drink a ton. Like, when I'd go out and stuff, it was more once I graduated and got into college, and that's when I drank, and I was really good at it.
You're really good at drinking. Did you say
that? I'm just saying how it was. I'm not proud of it, but I was good at it. And so I would bring, big bottles of vodka, the cheapest, and it wasn't just have a couple to feel good. It was like, drink as much as I can. Mm-hmm. And so it was like this ebb and flow with alcohol since I was, 20. Mm-hmm. And I even stopped for a year. But after that 1 year, because I mentally prepared myself, or told myself, okay, I'm going to do it for 1 year, on that 366th day, I drank again. Mm. And it was like,
let's celebrate. I did it.
Yeah. Celebrate, stop drinking by drinking again. And we were married. I think we were married.
Yeah.
And
I remember that year. I did not drink for that year, but I do remember you doing it.
And so it was like this ebb and flow of drinking. So it got to the point where, and we would go back and forth, and, sometimes we'd have intense fellowship over it, or, we'd drink too much, and then we're like, oh, let's not do that again. And then, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, it happened again. And so it was when we were remodeling the house, and Malachi was at the house with me. You and the other kids were somewhere else at Joni's or something like that. And we'd had like a case or something there. And so I was drinking beer, and we were working on the house and stuff. And Malachi had, said, wow, like you've had like, 5 or 6. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because at that point I had probably 8 or 9. And it was like, he's watching me.
Yeah.
And how I'm showing up. And obviously when you get to a certain point of drinking, you're not there, and your emotions are not there. Your communication is not there. You physically, your body is there, but you're not there.
Yeah.
As a whole being. And that just rocked me. And so him saying that was like the tipping point of like, this is not the man, the father, the husband, the person I want to be.
Yeah.
In this season of my life.
And now that here you are 2 years later, what would you have told yourself 5 years prior? Right. It's almost like that thing of what you know now about being 2 years sober, the hard, the good, the bad, the ups, the downs. What would you go back and tell yourself at 20? I wish I put the bottle back on that shelf. Macklemore song. It's like my favorite.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I was worried
don't know.
about what other people thought. Felt comfortable with myself.
I love that song. I think it was. I don't know if I would have been like ready.
But if you would, I'm just wondering. Like,
I have no idea.
Okay, I know my answer. Okay. I know my answer. So what you think about yours? I wish ultimately I would have understood, number one, the power of my limiting belief, because my limiting belief, I'm a fraud, I'm not as good as you think I am, and you're going to reject me, created a culture within me that needed to hide. I needed to, I was too much or not enough. And so it's like, I was here, but I was never here. And so alcohol became one of those areas that I was able to hide. And so I wish, and that day that I was at the farm, same spot of you, but just different circumstances, when the Holy Spirit said, what if I could be your hiding place? I remember I hit my knees, and I remember thinking, where was that question when I was 18 years old? Because I do remember, I know that this is silly, I don't blame you, but the day that you broke up with me, quote unquote, was the day that I remember physically wanting to run and hide. And so it's like, I have these moments in my life that I can remember physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually needing a hiding place. And I wish at 18 years old that I had not understood the scripture at a head level, but at a heart level of like, God, you are my hiding place. I will hide in you. I will run straight towards you. And I've been reading a ton in the Psalms right now. And David's journey feels very, very similar to mine, where it's like one Psalm he's up and then the next he's kind of down. And then the one he's up and then the next he's kind of down. But almost every chapter, at some point, he's saying, God, you are my hiding place. Like he literally uses hiding place, hiding place. You are my shelter. You are my hiding place. You surround me. You are my hiding place. And it's been one of those that it's just like, has been echoing in my mind over and over and over and over again. And it's like, I wish I had known that at 18 years old, known God as my hiding place. I knew him as other things. I didn't know him as my hiding place.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would have told my 18-year-old self. Is what if God could ultimately be your hiding place? Do you know him as that?
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Go, your turn.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think it was time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, could it have happened sooner? For sure. I mean, there again, we could have quit or never started once we got married, or, I think it was just.
But my question is like, what is that choice brought to your life? Just
clarity, just, like feeling good, feeling present. So it's once I feel like, for the most part, once I make a decision, it's just the decision.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's just, that's what I am. Mm-hmm. So at some point, it's not even like, well, I've been sober 2 years, like, no, I'm just sober.
Yeah.
3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Will I ever drink again? Maybe. I don't know, but not for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's just not the place, doesn't have a place in my life right now.
Yeah.
For who I am, what I want to represent, especially to our kids.
Yeah.
And it was the decision that could I have and should I have made sooner? Yes, but I wasn't convicted by it.
Yeah.
To stand in it and say, okay, no, like I can, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
Truly?
Yeah.
And so now it's like, once you stand in that place and experience it, you're like, I mean, what?
But I think so. Like this is so. If I could do the exercise for you, right? Is like that we tend to lose ourselves in the place that we're trying to find ourselves, And so it's like, I think that oftentimes, again, that's why we can hide behind these things, is because I don't know who I am. So I'm going to have another drink. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. And so that's why we're turning to these escapes, right? The escapism is so we don't have to think about that, as opposed to going, man, if I could really get clear on who I am and whose I am and what I want, then I can chase after those as opposed to hiding from them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
But I think, yeah. And I think though I think what we're talking about and how it had us relative, because biblically wine, Jesus turned water into wine. So it's there again. Does it have you to the point where you're getting drunk?
Agreed.
And in excess. And so I think with anything though, like, I mean, to the smallest things of TV or.
So what are you doing work on right now that you feel like has you?
I think it was the phone of like checking it almost like, too often. And so
it was all those I love you texts, huh? You were getting so many
it was. And so now I have an auto text back that just says fist bump.
Thanks.
No, and it's funny because the auto that like found me, because I didn't know you could do that. So something happened on my phone.
Like, yeah, I knew you could turn alerts off, but I didn't know that you could create a time.
You can a time bracket. And so like I kind of fell into it. And there again, I think God works in that way of like you're needing something and sometimes it's so blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
And it hits you and you're like still looking, and it's like in your hand. Like have you ever had that moment where you're like, it's so close to you and you're like, where is that? And you're like, it's right next to you, or it's in your hand, or like. And that's the way it was. And so I
do you
adjusted the brackets.
Do you know how like obvious of a metaphor that is? So do you know in the Bible it talks about the woman in the well, and she's going to the well because she needs water.
Yeah.
And Jesus is sitting at the well. And so here she's coming to fill up her bucket one time to get water. And he's like, I want to be your source.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, but let me get my water. Right. And then come back to this over and over and over and over again. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about, is this metaphor of that we're coming to all of the things in our life, asking for but like over and over and over, because we got to come back for more. And I got to come back for more. And I got to come back for more. And there's Jesus going, hey, I don't want to just quench your thirst. Like, I want to like be your source.
Yeah.
Right. So I think like what you're saying is just like the irony in that is, isn't it ironic?
Don't you think?
It's
like rain.
Okay, so any other areas? So your phone. Is there anything else that you would start to realize that, oh man, this has me, and what are you doing about it?
No, I think because I can work off of my phone, and so that's the biggest part. It was more of the work stuff. Like I don't do social media, emails. I'm not the best of checkers and responders of email, and so it really was more like stock work stuff, and just I'm passionately pursuing and figuring this business out. And so it's just, time on the charts and looking at patterns. And so it just started to be a point where if an alert would go off, and it could be in the evening or early morning, and you look at my phone, I'm like, oh, what is that? And it's like, it's irrelevant. I'm not going to do anything about it. So I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain amount of time that I won't get alerts. And even if I did pick up my phone to look at the time, I can't get triggered by like, I have to go into my phone to look at it. So
but I think that's what's so amazing about this journey for some people too, is though it's a one layer of
protecting myself.
1,000,000%. So it's like, we could all say, well, I should be strong enough. Well, until you are, don't be. Right. Like if that's a trigger, is to see those things, then you're right. Like turn those off. Right. Like I remember when we stopped drinking for a while, though I was with you, like when the decision was made, but you and I weren't showing up on Friday night at the bar with all of our friends being like, oh, well, we'll just power through. No, it changed our trigger moments. Right. I remember for a while, we stopped going to the grocery store, asking each other, do you want anything? Cause it was such a trigger point. I got Instacart. I stopped asking them and I just started ordering groceries. You know what I'm saying? But even for me, I mean, like that's what social media has been. Of like, there was so many trigger moments that were like creating such stress and anxiety that since making this decision, the level of peace has been almost mind-boggling, almost shattering, because I think that the level of like chaos and anxiety that I was creating within me, I was hiding behind the chaos as opposed to like, oh, dang. And so I think that by looking at ways to protect ourselves while we're building strength, I think is hugely important in the process of sobriety.
Yeah. And that's with anything. There again, it's, shopping or food, or like if you struggle with eating pints of ice cream, like don't have pints of ice cream at your house.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't put yourself in a
and
good
don't
way.
put yourself in that spot of like the vulnerable. Well, I get it for my kids, but then you end up eating it and you're like, well, you're justifying it to buy it, to just get it to the home.
Yep.
And then when you're weak and you're needing a little bit of quick fix, it's there.
Yeah.
And so I think 100%, I mean, and that's with any area of our life. I think most often we live in the past and we live in the future, and we're not just in the present.
Yeah.
And so how do I protect myself or guard my time or guard myself from potential weaknesses that I may have?
Yeah.
Is, to me, if you're identify an addiction, and then it's like making the commitment to move forward with, making sure it doesn't have you anymore.
Yeah.
And then what do I need to do to help protect myself so I don't feel like vulnerable and get triggered to then take action on that?
Yeah. And then I think there's a level of, building up the strength and resiliency over time. I think you hit on one point of not actually seeing yourself as, and I appreciate the steps of AA, but when it says, hey, my name is Julie and I'm an alcoholic, it's like, no, I think you have to actually realize that that's not who you are. And you can't just cope with it. I think that there's steps to take. And I think that there's going to be times in your life where the overcoming is more challenging. But I think recognizing that as a believer, like we are overcomers and we are more than conquerors, and like taking on your God-given identity versus a title, right, is really important. But then I also think that if I look at even our journey right out of the gate, those seasons that was really maybe harder when we were getting started, like we wouldn't put ourselves purposely in the place to be triggered. But then there has to be enough tension to where you don't lock yourself in a room for the rest of your life. Just enough tension to where you build strength and resolve, where I'm at a point right now, you couldn't pay me to drink. You couldn't pay me enough money. And I'm with you at 75 and we're traveling in an RV, and could I drink a beer with you? Maybe at that time, maybe. I have no idea. But even tomorrow, if you said, hey, I'll give you $1 million if you drink this, I know that drink would immediately have me again. It just would. It would start the whole thing over. And so you couldn't pay me enough, which means I'm not triggered by it in any way, shape, or form, because I've built up the resiliency towards it. And I think that even my team asked me, I know like currently with the social media, they said, what do you need from us? And I said, I'm actually not going to get back on until I understand my place in this, and until it doesn't trigger me the same way that it does. And I'll know when I know. And at this point, like it has me. And it has me, and it's all consuming. And until that I get that rectified, I'm not playing with the tool again. Use the tool. We have the tool. I have a team who knows the tool. Like we're going to do all of the things. But I think that it had become an idol. And ultimately, I think it's what was going to stop us from growing, is because of the idol it had become in my life. And so I think that just knowing that about creating those healthy boundaries right out of the gate, and knowing that that's not forever. Like you got to build strength to where you can like be in this world, but not of this world. Like that's the whole point.
Yeah. Well, and it comes back to like thinking of some people that we know, and even our own. It's like you really have to change your patterns and potentially the people that you hang around. And that to me is the harder part for some people, depending on what it is. Like if it is social drinking, but you want to hang out with these people, but you know that when you're going to be around them, they're going to be drinking, it's going to trigger you. And so it's like, you've got to look at like there again, what is the thing that's actually triggering you? It may not be the alcohol. It may be the environment or the social peer, the social group that you're around. And I think that for us, that was easier, obviously having kids and all that. But I know it's hard to make a change when you're doing the same, like,
if you're doing all the same things, like that's not,
it's almost like someone that struggles with weight, but then they drive by, they typically stop and get a sugary coffee and a scone every morning.
It's that same habit loop.
It's the same habit loop.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're not going to not drive that, if you're going to drive right past, like that is hard.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to make a decision, but then I need to like I need to fill it with something is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like you can't just stop something and just be like, That's it. No, I
Yeah.
need to fill it with something for a time being to like build a bridge to help me to get to where I want to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I think that my parting words is that I think that the level of awareness that we can have in this conversation is so important. Like, and why I say this, like our level of awareness, and my final thought is that I think one of the things that's been most helpful is that you've been up close and personal in my journey, and I've asked you, don't let me tap out. And so my awareness is saying, hey, Trav, when I come to you on these days, and I think that was our big commitment of what do we do when that day comes? Like, what are we going to do on Malachi's wedding? And what do we do on a hard day? Or what do we do on a Friday or a Christmas? And it was this commitment to each other of, I won't let you tap out, but I will be there with you on hard days. I think now seeing my team of like, what do you want us to do, JG, when it's hard, and what, like, to actually have people who can support you in it and that you can be that real and that vulnerable, I think is really, really important. Because before it was just easy for me to go, hey, Trev, if you have had a bad day, well, let's just have a glass of wine. Like, let's just like, and I would just feed into it. But now seeing that I have you and other people who can actually support me in building strength, I think is also so important.
Yep.
And would be my parting words. Just don't do it alone.
100%. And because you're stopping social media, this is our last podcast. So
Sorry.
we appreciate you guys joining us.
We'll see you never.
And yeah, we'll never be back.
No, I'm not going anywhere. Actually, if you're in our Facebook group, this is so funny that you said it though. Even Renee was like, well, does that mean you're not? No, I'm like, my Facebook group is our family. I'm still doing my Facebook. My team is still posting from me. All the verbiage you're seeing is still me. We're just doing it differently. We are leveraging. We have hours and hours and hours of content. I've written pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. I have with books and quotes and pictures and photos for days. And the reason I'm doing this, one, is because the team really wants to leverage it. But two, God's called me to write again. He's called me to deliver freedom 2.0. And I need to protect that time. I need to protect my mind. I need to protect my heart. But no, we're not quitting. I'm not quitting.
Well, it's exactly what we talked about there. Again, you're not quitting. It's just having the infrastructure in place so you can focus on what you do. And then the team is putting out the content that you're doing, but you're not looking at it because it's easy to get sucked into it and look at, you post it. And then if you get comments or if, wandering on it. So I think it's not that you're stop doing it. It's you're just doing it differently.
We're doing it our way, and we're doing it our way. And here's what's been really cool is that I've been very clear on my way, which is I know that God's given me message. I know that he's asked me to say things. And so I'm going to let them do their thing, right? Like they know the algorithms, they know the rhythms, like they know the posting. And instead of me spinning my wheels and trying to control all the things and be the main hub, like that's not my lane. That's not what I do well. That's actually where the enemy is distracting me. And it's causing me to be more of a coward. And I'm starting to just make sure I say everything the way that it needs to be said and to follow the perfect bridge. And now, but he's called me to speak what he's asked me to speak. But I've been so preoccupied based upon the algorithms or the frameworks or the like, make sure you say this and this way. And it's like, stop, like, I am not accountable for the framework. I'm accountable to say what God's asked me to say. And until I can rectify that and get so clear on that, I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to let them do their part. I'm going to do my part. Because that's what I'm responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not responsible for the statistics. At the end of the day, I will stand before God and he will ask me, Julia, did you say what I asked you to say? And I never want to go, well, but God, there was this specialist who told me to say it in this way. Like, I don't want to do that. And I want to be a mouthpiece for what heaven is saying. And I want to boldly declare what I feel like God wants me to say. And that's what I will be doing.
So until next time,
I'm going to go cry. Okay.
Join us on the Dream On podcast.
We'll see you soon.